Hello, everyone. This is Ed Breniger, and welcome to the Eddy Network podcast. My guest today is Noam Sapiens. Is that correct? The correct way?
Yeah,
Good.
absolutely.
Fantastic. I don't always get the names correct, but well, I'm glad I did today. And Noam works with another that I've had on the podcast, John Surrey. So I welcome you, Noam, and I look forward to our conversation wherever it may lead us.
So am I. Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
So tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and maybe how you found yourself doing it.
Okay. So, I'm Noam Sapien. I started working at EyeQue about 6.5 years ago with John, as you mentioned. I was born in DC. I grew up in Israel. Uh, I started with a PhD in physics, working in telecom, working in defense industries, semiconductor industries, medical devices, doing technology pretty much all my life. I really wanted to be an inventor as I started. And I think that the opportunities that I've had throughout my life really led me to what I'm doing right now, which is really innovative technology and something that is impactful and is meaningful, new that nobody did before.
Why don't you describe that since some of the people watching will probably have not seen my conversation with John?
Absolutely. So at EyeQue, we create medical devices that people can use on their own to test their vision, get the numbers they need for getting glasses, for example, and really take ownership over their eye health. Um, the biggest thing that I can say is that the technology is really innovative. It really works well for people that are putting the effort into doing it because, vision is a very subjective thing. But the main thing is that it allows people to really do things by themselves for themselves, where before you had to really depend on others for vision. Um, I think one of the main things that we see in this market is that people don't really realize that doing this by themselves is a possibility. Um, People think that if they have some problem with vision, they have to go to an eye doctor. I mean, at most, they will say, "Oh, I'll go to Walmart or Costco or something like that and do an eye exam there and get glasses." But you can do this at home. Same as when you say, "I need to measure my blood pressure," or "I need to measure pulse," or when you exercise and things like that. You don't say, "Oh, I need to measure my blood pressure. Let me go to a doctor and do that." Right? There's there's technology out there today for so many medical aspects of our lives. Vision is just one of them, and that's where we focus at EyeQue. And my passion is really technology, and the technology there is really innovative. Um, I don't know if you've heard before, but EyeQue has more than 35 patents. Um,
Wow.
yeah, I wrote most of them, but this is a very innovative field. There are a lot of ways for people to take control over their health, and the technology is there to do that. Just need to increase the awareness of the capabilities.
Right.
Yeah.
So, do we need to make a distinction between what you can do for yourself in determining what power of lenses you need for a pair of glasses and the other facets of eye health, like whether you have glaucoma or cataracts and things like that? Can you how do you all look at that relationship that here is a consumer using your device to determine what he or she needs for their glasses, but they also need to be in a relationship with a physician who can help them with cataracts and glaucoma and things like that.
Absolutely. I mean, our technology is not a replacement for going to a doctor if you need something more than just a pair of glasses. Same as when we were just mentioning the blood pressure measurement. It's not enough to just measure your blood pressure. There are a lot of other factors that your doctor will look into if you go to an in-person exam. And the fact that you're measuring your blood pressure at home is not a replacement for going to your doctor. It's very similar to that. The main thing here is that there is a very big problem of lack of access, and quite frankly, there aren't enough doctors to handle the load. A lot of people, I mean, I can start quoting some statistics. A lot of people, if we're talking about the United States, there are about 200 million people that need to go see an eye doctor every year, and only 100 million actually go see an eye doctor every year, which means that 50%, 100 million people that need to go see an eye doctor don't, which means that their eyesight is not great. They're missing out on some potentially even more significant problems. And I know a lot of the organizations out there will tell you, oh, they need to go to an eye doctor because if they don't and they use something like remote or at-home measurement just to get glasses, they will miss out on cataracts and glaucoma and all of these other things. But I'm under the belief that something is better than nothing.
Yeah.
And if if yes, they should go see an eye doctor and get all of these measurements, but if they can't or they won't because of various reasons, something like EyeQue's technology is at least going to give them a better quality of life. They will be able to see better, at least for the time being, um, if it relates to refraction or other vision that we're testing for.
So let me toss this into a larger scope of consideration. It sounds to me, I mean, this is my experience. It sounds to me that one of the things that you're recommending, maybe I'm putting words into your mouth, but let's just say one of the things I think that you're recommending is for the patient or the customer to have a more intelligent conversation with their physician. I'll give you an example. Last year, I went to see for the first time a primary care physician since I had moved here, and they tested my blood pressure and they felt like it was high. And I have a blood pressure cuff here at home, and I tested it, and it's fairly similar. Um, and then I had gone to the Red Cross and had my blood pressure done there, and they did it manually there. It wasn't mechanical, and it was lower, significantly lower. And so before I went to see my primary care physician 2 months later, I said, I mean, she wanted to put me on blood pressure medication. I said, I don't want to do that. because once I start, I have to be on it the rest of my life. And I've got another 30, 35 years of life ahead of me. And that to me is just an expense I don't want to go into. So I'd rather change my blood pressure by lifestyle changes, which is what I did. And now the interesting thing was the day I was to see her at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I decided that morning I'm going to test my blood pressure um, on both arms several times over a period of 2 hours. So I ended up testing it eight times in 2 hours, and it was all rather erratic, but they were all elevated. At 11, okay, that was between 8 and 10 o'clock in the morning. At 11, I went to give blood at the Red Cross, and my blood pressure was low. At 3 o'clock, I go to see, and they do the blood pressure, and I'm telling the technician what my experience is, and I actually have my a piece of paper with all my readings on there from the day, and I said, "Would you be willing to do manual?" She said, "Sure." So she had to go track down. It was in some drawer somewhere, and they did it manual, and it was lower than what the machine was doing. And so, but if I had not taken control of that, we would just be assuming that I had high blood pressure when I think I'm reading high when I'm really not having high blood pressure. So I think that's what I see as the emerging relationship that we as patients and customers need to have with our physicians.
And I agree completely. I mean, the more educated you are about your own health, whether it's understanding what the issues are, so under even understanding what blood pressure is. So what do these numbers even mean, right? And understanding and being able to talk to your doctor at a level that is not like where the doctor is just dictating, here it is, this is what it is, this is what it means, and you're like, amen, right?
Right, right.
Where you actually can have a conversation with your doctor that is very powerful. And, in the past, and I believe that happens today as well, you do a lot of, when there's something significant in your life from a health perspective, you want a second opinion.
Yes,
But But who better, who knows you better than you if you understand enough to give yourself a second opinion? You knew, wait a minute, I don't feel blood pressure or any issues going on here. I want to get to the bottom of this. And you did. And by doing so, you could actually have a meaningful conversation with your doctor about your blood pressure. Not just, I don't believe that it's this, I would like a second opinion, because they would look at you and they would be like, second opinion about what? The blood pressure medication? Um, but something more significant to you,
yes,
which is, I really believe is the better approach. Um, and with blood pressure, it was pretty easy to do because the technology is out there. Blood pressure cuffs are readily available. You can buy them on Amazon, you can buy them at Walmart or whatever. Um, the technology is out there. You can test, you can compare, and it makes it easier for you to really take ownership over your own health. We would like to do the same with vision.
I agree. I agree. So, what has been the response from optometrists to this innovation that you all have created?
Well, depends on who you ask.
Yeah.
So there are optometrists that realize this is something, yes, it's a game changer. It changes the way things are being done, but it can actually change them for the better. It can actually make it So an optometrist can reach populations that they couldn't before because they live 100 miles away and they don't have access to another optometrist. There aren't enough optometrists in the US. Um, there are those that are intimidated by it, as it's natural because, oh, people will do this all by themselves at home, and then I won't be able to sell them glasses. It takes away from my livelihood. So I understand that. But at EyeQue, we welcome optometrists. Come, all optometrists, come to us, let us work together, and we can make it a win-win situation. I keep saying something like this to every time I talk about EyeQue. So I give the example of you go to a dentist. When you finish your treatment, you get a toothbrush from a dentist. I mean, if you really brush your teeth so well, you won't need a dentist anymore. Does that mean dentists won't do that? I mean, they do it because they feel like it creates the bond. It shows that they care. It shows that they um, really appreciate your health. And I think um, with an optometrist, it could be very similar. They can take a little, for example, a little EyeQue device, tiny, small,
Yeah.
and give it to their patients as when they finish with their tests in the office so that they can continue monitoring their vision at home. They can continue monitoring and our systems are all, everything is digital, everything is, remote and everything done in a way that it's automated. So the doctor can actually get all the information from those devices and track the user as they are at home and call them to the office and say, "Oh, we've noticed that you have this and this issue with your eye that you didn't have before. You should come back and we can talk about what options you have."
Yeah.
Um, that doesn't happen right now, but that's kind of a vision that we're looking at where we would love to work with all optometrists and really provide them with tools that enable them to reach populations that today they don't reach, either because of distance, convenience, cost. There are many reasons people don't go to the eye doctor. Um, one of one of the main ones is actually awareness. People don't realize that they need to go to the eye doctor until they really don't see well. Um, and so increasing awareness, increasing the accessibility um, to eye care is what EyeQue is all about.
It would seem to me a smart, innovative optometrist would say, "Here, take this home. Check this every month or so, and when you see something different, we'll know. We'll let and then we can arrange to get you some new lenses, or we can arrange for you to come in and we'll do some more testing to see if there's something going on." But that makes it makes it so much more immediate, and instead of all the burden is on us to make an appointment, and I've experienced that with the doctors I've had in the past, where um, yeah, we'll call you in 6 months or something like that, and they don't.
That's
You
right.
drop to and so this, I think anything that makes the relationship between a patient and a doctor better is really worthwhile. And I mean, when John described that to me, a few weeks ago, that was my initial thought. Oh, this is going to be great for for the relationship between patient and their optometrist. You see, I want one of these because I've been dealing with the need for glasses since I was in fifth grade. So I've experienced a long life of these. Actually, I need new frames. My frame broke, this week, and so I have to get new frames. And and the more choices we have, I think, the better. Um, and I think that's really good. So you told me earlier that you have a PhD in physics.
Yes.
What did you specifically study? What was your focused study in your PhD work?
Well, my PhD was about holograms and the use of them for telecommunication.
Wow, you've really piqued my interest. When you mean communication, are you meaning technology, electronic communication, or what do you?
So, so the way we do communication today is all the short range communication is done via electronic communication, digital electronics, and then long haul communication, so continent to continent, and sometimes even you know uh, places big as United States would have i- i- uh, internal communication like that. Use fiber. I mean, yes, there are some fiber to the home, very common in Japan. It's starting to become more and more common in the United States as well. Um, it's supposed to be fast, but the way things are done usually is when you have long distances, you use optics, you use fiber, and when you have shorter distances, you just use electronics. And the main reason for short distances to use electronics is because routing on the optical side is very not, it's not very efficient, especially the way it's been done when I was doing my PhD. So that's about 15 and something years ago. Um, and so the idea that came to me in the PhD, and I was working with a professor I was doing my PhD in Israel at the Hebrew University, working with Professor Agranat, and we were working on an idea of using what's called a volume hologram, which is basically a way to route optical signals based on things like wavelengths. And so we were we were able to create an optical switch using these holograms that is wavelength selective, which is what was missing at the time for routing optical communication.
Mhm.
Using this kind of the technology that we used, we were able to build a small network where we could control the direction of this of different signals based on their wavelength, and we were able to change the routing scheme um, um, however way we wanted. Um, and that is something that didn't exist back then. I believe there are ways of doing that better today.
Okay.
Um, and so we built that. I mean, I built that. That was my PhD.
Uh, I'm fascinated by what you've just said. So let me ask you some questions. So what you were saying, correct me if I'm wrong, please, because I like physics, but I've never studied it. I just picked it up from having conversations with people who are physicists, and I had a son who was a physics major in college, so we've had those kind of conversations. So am I correct in saying that what you are exploring in your PhD was how to take the quantum world into a practical application, which in a sense replaces the old electronic world?
Well, it's a little bit like that. I mean, the main thing that you will need is um, we were working on a concept of call it an optical power grid. So today in electronics, you have a power grid. If you have an electronic board, you don't take a and put a battery or a power supply for every chip.
Right.
There's a one source of power, and it's distributed to the rest of the
An
board.
infrastructure there that moves the electricity wherever it needs to go.
Yeah, so the idea was, why do we put lasers or light sources every time we need an optical source instead of just putting one for the entire system and then
Ah,
routing
ah,
everything to where it needs to go? Now, that routing requires a little bit of effort because optics and electronics are not the same.
right.
Um, there are a lot of similarities, but there are a lot of differences too. So we needed a way to be able to control what light goes where. And the way to do that was to use um, holograms that were recorded on special crystals that were used in the lab that I was working at. And those crystals, if you apply a certain voltage to them, they will let a certain wavelength go through. And if you apply a different voltage, then a different wavelength would go through. And we were able to control that to a point where back then there were about 100 wavelengths in the wavelength range for optical communications. Today, my guess is we're talking about 4 times that. But we were able to control the wavelengths that go through and the wavelengths that continue. So you would have like a split where everything goes this way except one wavelength that will go in the other direction. So you were able to control which wavelength that is that goes in the other direction and perform routing that way.
And
That was very innovative back then.
do you see that uh, my language is not precise enough, but the mechanism for creating the hologram, the creating that wave system, uh,
Mhm.
it gets connected to others that are like that. They're networked together in some way, and they're optically networked rather than
Correct.
electronically networked.
Correct.
And so you could have an optical network here. I could have one right here in my home on my computer and be communicating with someone in Japan or someone in Peru, who also has that same kind of network. Would I be correct in that the cost of that would be much less? It would be, um, is it more efficient or is
Yeah,
it,
so it is a lot more efficient so you don't need as many call it amplifiers because the way optics can travel, so optical signal can travel in an optical fiber for very long distances, hundreds of miles, um, unlike electrical signals that the distance that they can travel is much shorter
right?
because you will need a lot of amplification. Now, yes, optical signals will require magnification at some point, but you can go a lot longer without any amplification with optical
This is the
signals.
picture of the future.
Yeah.
Okay. And to me, that's really interesting. It's really cool. And I look forward to seeing where that goes because it seems like is it more is it more difficult? I'm now thinking about how um, electronic signals can be tapped into and stolen, you know, the information. Yeah. Is there a similar problem with the optical systems?
I mean, it's harder to steal optical signals, mainly because you will need to somehow tap into the fiber, and by doing that, the other end will know because you're taking away basically from think about it as a flow of photons, and you're just taking away from that flow, which would mean that the other side will know, okay, now something happened because I'm getting less photons than I should be getting.
So
So
we
there,
should be looking for signals in the news where there is a fiber optic company that's going to lay some new fiber optic cabling between the U.S. and Europe, the U.S. and Asia, uh, or where they're going to put it in a community. And I mean, I've already inquired about whether I could get fiber optic here in my home.
yeah,
Um, Certainly would help on. I used to have problems with the internet feed, you know, being interrupted, but
right.
I suspect that that wouldn't be a problem with the fiber optic. Would that be correct?
Usually fiber optics are faster. That's why they use them. Everything with optics is moving in the speed of light. Um, Electronics is a lot slower than that.
So did you feel like you were creating the future as you were working on your PhD?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, almost everything that I do, everything that I ever did, I felt like I'm creating the future. Um, I mean, as I said, I worked in telecom a little bit, and I worked in defense industries, definitely creating the future there. Worked in semiconductor industries, um, super cutting edge technology. We're talking about things that it's hard to imagine, being able to measure things that are at the scale of, single atoms.
Yeah.
Um, right? It's mind-boggling to really think we can actually measure to that level. And that's part of what I was doing when I was working in semiconductor industry. And then in the medical devices industry, I mean, it was always this is so impactful because it helps people really improve their quality of life. So everything that I ever did was this has a lot of impact. It was really important for me to work on something that, wow, this is going to make a difference. So I've always done that. It's, every job that I interviewed for, every job that I took on, um, it was always one of the main factors for choosing that role. Do I have both impact internally in that company to actually make something, and do I have enough? And is what I'm actually making going to make an impact in the world and will make a difference? Um, that is
How do you
definitely one of the main things.
how do you define impact? What's that? What does that look like tangibly?
Make lives better, whether it's from from a medical perspective for people making their lives. So in EyeQue, it's making people see better.
Mhm.
Uh, I believe that, vision is one of the most important senses, um, if not the most important sense.
Right.
And helping people actually see well, that is very impactful. And as I said, worked in semiconductor industries, um, making things that will improve the quality of life for people and will enable the um, advancement of technology to a point where our lives will become simpler, easier. Um, that is impactful. That is what I was very interested in doing.
Yeah, I think all of the if we maybe this is a way of looking at it. If we took the all the senses that we have and said, let's invest in technology that enhances those sensory receptors in the human body, I think we would find all kinds of things emerging from what we were learning that just saying, well, we're going to go build some new machines would never get us there. So I lost hearing in my right ear um, 3.5 years ago, and I'm amazed at how complex and really unknowing we are about how hearing actually takes place. And yeah, it's
We were even more, we know even less really about vision.
is that
Um,
right?
Overall, I mean, we know a lot, but there's a lot that just eludes us. It's so complex. Um,
I heard
the connection of the eye to the brain is really something that is unique. I mean, in terms of all the senses that we have, um, eyes are truly one of the most complex um, sensors that we have. I mean, uh, many years, the main issue that um, existed with AR and VR was yeah, we could make, images and it looks 3D and it looks like it's the way but we failed to realize and understand how the brain perceives the images so that yes, we had the technology to project those images, but we didn't understand the way the brain operates. And so you would go into a VR headset, and after 15 minutes, you go with a splitting headache
right,
because your brain doesn't know how to handle that kind of stimulus. Um, and it's very different from the way it's been doing things for the real world.
right,
And so that is we're getting better. I mean, the technology is getting better. The perception issue is being really addressed now. I think a lot of these companies actually understand that this is one of the main things that they need to handle in AR and VR. It's not just the projection of photons onto your retina. It's more than that. And I think that is something that always fascinated me. Um, Understanding the concept of perception in vision. So that is a very interesting topic on its own.
yeah, I agree with you, and it's something that is a current interest of mine because I see that perception oftentimes is a reflection of our thought process rather than of our bodily receiving of signals, where
That's
we
right.
seek to understand. That's a very deep subject. But I think that's the kind of those are the kinds of questions that um, are important. I interviewed last year Juhani Pallasmaa, who is a Finnish architect and philosopher, and he wrote a short book, oh, 30 years ago called "The Eyes of the Skin," and he's and his point is that the skin is the most valuable sensory organ, where the eyes are not, because the eyes don't touch things and stuff like that. That's really interesting. And I was listening to a audio recording of Ian McGilchrist. I don't know if you know of him. And he was talking about eyes, and that over the course of history, natural history, whatever you want to call it, the eye has been reinvented, so to speak, like 5 or 6 times. And that what it was like, a million years ago is not what it's like today. I mean, all of this is really fascinating to me because ultimately, if you can put that information into a form that people can use, then they know what to do when they walk into a crowded room, and there's all kinds of activity going on, and they know how to separate all those different emotions and feelings that they're having and be really clear about, oh, this is what I want to achieve during my time in this place.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to ask you one more question because this is part of your world, I'm assuming. So, what is your experience with AI, and what is your perspective of where it's taking us?
Yeah, so I mean, AI is a very broad term and people use it very loosely today.
Right, I,
So,
I understand that.
um, so I mean, even at IQ, we use AI to better the test. So the test becomes more, it uses AI to adapt to your specific needs. So that's, you know, experience in very recent experience using AI in the um, in IQ. I think AI is going to really augment capabilities that we already have.
Hmm.
And I'll explain that a little bit. You know, a lot of the, oh, generative AI is coming. AI is going to, create things and make things. I, it's very nice to think that, but I think it's also very naive because AI is based on what you give it. It's a computational model that is based on the information and the um, senses or whatever it is that you want to call it, the data that you feed it, and it can take it, it can integrate it, it can manipulate it, it can, but creation is not is very, I would say it's very human. It's something that people will still need to come up with ideas that are revolutionary. I'm not talking about incremental improvements. Yes, AI can help with that a lot, I'm sure. But if you're talking about the real revolutions out there, you still need a human that will use AI to augment their capabilities and augment the um, pieces that are missing and pieces that they don't know too much about, or uh, deal with details and things like that that AI can help with. But I really believe that real creation is a human capability and not AI, at least not until AI becomes conscious, which is, again, what's the definition of that? A whole different story.
I'm with you, and I think that um, what AI does for us human beings is that it should motivate us to be more creative,
Exactly.
and it should facilitate our creativity in a way that creates a faster rate of change.
I agree. I completely agree. It should allow us to handle the uh, more menial parts of creating, while coming up with the ideas would still stay a human
Yeah.
um, thing, right? And I completely agree that it is a facilitator. It's going to help us. It's going to make us really think more on a high architecture level of a solution rather than here is um, this level of code or this level of mechanical engineering or this level of course, we need all of these things, but I think AI can help a lot with all of the capabilities that surround innovation and creativity, but it cannot replace the innovation and creativity of humans.
Would I be correct in saying that, in a sense, the hierarchy that exists within humanity between those who are constantly pushing the edge of the envelope and those who are willing to accept a lower response from the technology that they adopt? I'm really thinking about the Rogers technology adoption model. That there are going to be people who are going to dabble with AI and never do much with it. And then there are going to be people who are going to, just like we already have people who have taken the digital technology that has been created over the last half century and have done amazing things with it, while other people have just, well, they're using it for um, correcting the things their letters that they're writing to or something. Is that there's this human tendency to do the least amount to get the most amount from it, but
Right.
actually that produces a level of mediocrity that I think is going to be more difficult to sustain in the future. Where I'm going with this is that we we have to become more intentional and more energetic and more risk being willing to engage in risk if we're going to be able to function well in the world that's emerging to us right now.
I would agree. I mean, I think that you will always have, I think one of the main things is it, to what you said is there will be an increase in the gap between the people that use AI to fix their homework assignment to people that use AI to um, really deal with the small items that are necessary to come up with the next big idea,
Right.
right? And so I believe that that kind of gap is going to increase. I mean, you can see it, you can see that gap existing today in other types of technology out there, um, where you see the people that use that technology just as intended, let's call it, or as other people thought of, and other people use that technology for completely new and innovative things. And I love that because that's an example of what EyeQue has been doing, because our technology takes a smartphone, a very simple, device that is intended for making phone calls, entertainment, browsing the internet, maybe checking your emails, and integrating it into a medical device. The Using the screen as the light source, using the computational capabilities for the analysis, that is a way that when someone thought of the smartphone, that was not in the list of things that they had in mind. And that is exactly, I believe, the difference that you're talking about. And we'll see that with AI as well. People that will just use it as intended. Oh, yeah, it's something that I can talk to. I can get my essays better. I can, check my grammar, my spelling, do things like that. And people that will take it to a completely new level and do things with it that will be completely innovative and things that we are not even thinking about right now.
Yeah, it's a fascinating time we're living in.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
So here's my last question. What do you have hope for the future?
Do I have hope for the future? Of course.
Well, it's not a well, you say of course because that's who you are. But I've had people who it takes them a while to figure out whether they actually do have that hope. They have a different orientation. And my sense is that people like you who've gone and gotten a PhD in physics or who do work in technology, who are innovative, do have a hopeful view of the future. But would it be fair to say that your hopefulness is really born in the benefits that are going to come to people because of the work you're doing?
I think it's more than that. I'm First of all, I'm a true optimist for everything. I really
Okay, all
believe
right.
that, yes. So I
We're getting to
believe
the real
things
story here. Good.
will, things will be, think that you know, looking at, oh, this generation is doing this and this generation is doing that, and
Right.
I don't I don't believe in these kind of generalizations. I think that people I believe in people. I believe people will lead. And no matter what kind of generation you are and what kind of, I've seen, people saying, oh, in my generation, things were like this and we did it that way and things were a lot better and there was a lot more efficiency. People were a lot more disciplined. They were less spoiled, etc. And people said the same thing about my generation, and people say same things about the next generation, the generation after that. I believe that in every generation, in every part of society, there will be people that rise, will be more because they have motivation, drive, ideas, creativity that others don't. And even though there are differences in the way things are being done by different generations or different populations, there will always be the few, unfortunately, that will lead and bring the next step. So right now we're talking about AI and VR and all of these wonderful things. If we were having this conversation 20 years ago, we would be talking about other types of technologies. And
Right.
if we talk again in 20 years, we'll be talking about completely different set of technologies. But there's always innovation, and I see that overall it's accelerating. And that's what gives me hope that it's not really slowing down. Even though there are forces that are trying to, you know, regulators and um, uh, unhealthy competition and things like that. But overall, if you look at things, um, I am, as I said, an optimist. I believe that reality will just move forward, and the people that have the drive, that have the motivation, that are creative, will be the ones that will take us forward.
I agree with you. And I do not feel like there's anything that's inevitable. There's no tragedy or success that's inevitable. It all has to be achieved, and we have to work at it. And I think when you decide that you're willing to work hard to achieve something, then your whole mindset changes about the struggle and the hardships and the disappointments and the failures, because ultimately none of those matter. Well, all that matters is I'm going to get to that point in the future that I've envisioned.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. And I think that the societal forces that resist change are finding it more difficult to resist change. And change is upon
Absolutely.
us in massive ways, and I think we celebrate that, and we encourage people who we encounter to go learn something new, go try something new, you know, develop a new skill, learn a new language, um, go take a cooking class, go take a welding course, do something different than you've ever done, because in that you will discover something about yourself which will carry you forward. I'm in my 70s, but I keep thinking, do I have a PhD in me that I could still go do? I mean, is that kind of sort of thing of how can I go intensify my learning?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah. There's no there I don't believe there's a I mean age is just a number. I think that you can achieve whatever you really set your mind to it. So if you set your mind to, oh, I want to do a PhD now. And if you
you
just set your mind to it, you and you can just do it.
with the accomplishments that you have had, and it sounds like you've had many working with IQ, and I celebrate that. That's fantastic. But I also suspect that you realize that your life has not reached its pinnacle yet.
Yeah. I mean, I don't no matter how high up, I mean, this is kind of a metaphor, but no matter how high up I climb, I don't believe in my life I will ever reach a peak because whenever I reach somewhere where it's like, this is so above what I thought 3 years ago, I always have higher aspirations.
Yeah.
So I always, it's perpetual for me. It's always going to be, no matter what I do, I'm going to want to do more.
As my high school track coach often said, you don't run to the finish line, you run through the finish line. And I think that's what we're doing. Well, I'm really glad to meet you. And I celebrate the work that you and John are doing. And I think it's going to be amazing to see where it goes. I think I need to adapt I mean, I know I need it. Um, I could use your technology. And I look forward to maybe having another conversation with you.
Absolutely. I had a great time. That was really fun.
And
Thank you.
you're welcome. And thank you all for watching. And I hope this has inspired you to go try something new. Go do something, decide you're going to change something. Maybe you're going to go learn AI. There are a lot of courses online. You can go learn AI. Whatever you decide to do, give it your best. Give your whole self to it and see what happens. And if it doesn't produce what you want, then stop it and try something else. Just keep trying, keep doing things. And your life will come to matter in ways that today you cannot imagine. And I think that's the quest that we all have. So I thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time here on the Eddie Network podcast. Bye bye.